All right, welcome back, ASLers. And we are continuing with the learning scenario and facets that will come into play in this game, in many of your games. So this is not an isolated scenario which might portray certain things over the others. Many scenarios have the same components. It's just pieces of the puzzle that you have to be able to use in order to get your objective. So let's just refresh, jump back to the scenario, see what we have here. Again, let's just take it from the top. And this isn't any deep super strategy. It's just stuff that, just as general players, you can use to unlock, I don't know, good play, decent play, standard play. Who cares? It's just using the rules that are in the system and to your advantage. And you have to be able to recognize them, and the game most of the time will not point them out to you. And so you have to be able to be well versed. The good players are the ones that are well versed in the rules. If you are not well versed in the rules, then you are operating with half a deck, to be honest with you. And the more rules you know, not necessarily the hard ones, but just the more rules you know and how to use properly, then you'll be fine. In this situation, do you have to be a master of boats to do well at the scenario? Absolutely not. Matter of fact, in this scenario, we'll go over it in just the beginning, and just to kind of show you exactly what you need to know about the boats. Um, but again, not a big fan of having the scenario 1941. If this was play testing this with an 8-0 or a 9-0 will achieve different results. If the scenario is designed, or if it's assumed that you will switch it out, don't put the 8-0 here. Do not put this little bastard there. Just put the 9-0 right there, Commissar. That's a simple fact. Now, if there weren't any Commissars there, then just say Commissar substitution is NA. Otherwise, if you play tested it with that swap every single time by tying in our date to our 8-0 presence, then so be it. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me that if the scenario was play tested, let's say half the scenarios, let's say this scenario went 15 and 15, right? In their playtest. Yeah, assuming it's playtested that way. I don't think any scenario gets playtested 30 times in its final form. I just think I don't really think any scenario gets that much. There's too many scenarios out there to have too much time. I could be wrong, but I don't see a small playtest group of 4 to 6 people playing it 30 times. Um, I don't know. I could be wrong, but let's say of your 15 Russian wins, of your 15 Russian wins, 12 of them were because someone substituted the commissar out, right? So does that make an impact? Probably. It could be. The other 3 wins might have just been due to poor dice rolling on the Germans' part, or really good dice rolling on the Russians' part. So you don't know that. None of that information is given here. So for scenarios to do that and incorporating this, just add the piece there. I mean, this came into a part in another scenario that I was watching online. Um, in terms of the OB, and that's why I always, talk to you guys about the OB. Like, why is this half squad there? Why is the medium machine gun there? Where it has to be dismantled to get into the boat, right? Why isn't this just straight up DM? If it's straight up DM, like most weapons are, when they have an OB, again, might this be design? Might this be a poor design flaw in terms of understanding that medium machine guns have to be dismantled, mortars have to be dismantled before they put in to get into a boat, get into a glider? Why not just list the OB, right? This gives you the option, and that's why of my previous, if you want to look at the other video, if you haven't seen it, go look at the other video first. Stop what you're doing here, go back to the other one. In that, and we're going to address this 248 as well. And I hadn't even seen this one in the first time. This is another sort of quote trick that you can do. So given this is not dismantled, that means it can be just put on the shore and used immediately in the first turn. It can't be loaded in the boat like that, but when it's DM'd, if it says DM'd on the weapon, that means it must start the scenario dismantled. You have no other choice, which again gives you a clue that weapon's probably going to be on some sort of transport or things like that. When you have mortars, which we don't have any here, you have your simple mortar support weapons, which these are not. And you have to travel a distance, like these guys, they have to travel a distance. Dismantle those mortars. You're probably not going to be firing for a couple turns. Dismantle them, drop them down to the 2 or 3 portage points so you can move much faster with those mortars. It makes no sense to keep those mortars mantled. Again, their effectiveness is going to be limited anyway. So if you lose one fire phase by not mantling those mortars early and trugging that 5 portage point piece of lodestone along with you, and you're about 2 turns behind anyway because you're lagging and you probably didn't leave your leader with them. Again, low leaders that were going to be broken, 6+1 leaders, can tote weapons around, can move weapons across the battlefield. Use those for, troop movements, support weapon movements. If not anything, maybe support weapon recovery. So a 6+1 leader can fire a mortar at least one shot, better than nothing. If essentially a 6+1 leader could shoot out 2 firepower, maybe get a crit. You never know. Don't just cookie cutter your way through the scenario. Mines are random. That's what I like about the mines in this one here. You don't even know where they're going to be, how many there are. I like that in terms of a learning scenario. At that point, you just kind of go through the mine rules as you approach them. If the German avoids them, you don't have to worry about the mine rules at all. Big one in here, again, first thing to look at. If I'm attacking, I have 6 units and he has 8 units. So how will the Germans, obviously there's only 6 boats, why not give me more troops and make it easier to assault? So when you see a scenario like this and you see a giant 10-2 monster right here, you have to tie this, and the lack of troops versus their troops into connection. Again, the other thing you have to invoke for this unit against these guys is it doesn't really doesn't show on this scenario card that I can see right here. And I don't know. I'll have to check it out, but I'll do that in just a couple minutes. But you're outnumbered and you're attacking. So how can you balance that factor? And we'll go ahead straight to the map to attack. How do we balance that factor out? Before we go there, I'm just going to cut down here just to remind us what activities and strengths we have in the scenario special rules. You'll want to read these a couple times, almost in any scenario, unless they're just like terrain altering rules. And even so, if they have overlays down here, make sure you get the overlays on the map. Make sure your opponent verifies the overlay placement is accurate. And if you don't know how to place overlays, I don't know if it's in chapter B, wherever it may be, look under overlays in your index, and then it will tell you, I think it's probably might be an A, how to place overlays that are not a single hex. So go read that. You'll need to know that anyway. And both of you need to verify that the overlays are placed properly. Don't assume your opponent knows what the hell he's doing. Everyone can make mistakes. You can read it backwards. Sometimes you might be tired setting it up late at night before you guys play the next morning. just verify. It's not that big a deal. And plus, it gets you in that sort of, I don't know, keeping you on your toes. All right, first things first. SFSR play. That's the whatever the hell this game pack is. Spanish, blue, scenario special rules. Most of those are just terrain rules and simple things. EC or wet, not really going to be applicable in this scenario. No wind, not going to be applicable in this scenario for the most part. 10 minus 2 is a heroic counter. Again, you'll have to read that. Understand that heroes can die quicker than leaders. So if he's subjected to excessive fire, it's possible he may just straight out die. And then, so we have the hero rules coming into play, which normally, I mean, it's random whether you're going to get a hero during a scenario. This one, it forces you to understand and read the hero rules. Fanatic. Units next to a leader. Again, the same sort of thing with a hero is during the course of play, when you heat a battle, you become fanatic. That may not happen in all scenarios, and it may not happen to more than one unit. It can only probably one unit can be fanatic, probably in every other game you play. So in this one, you're going to be next to the 10 minus to the 2 leader, and if anything, he's going to be stacked with a couple units. Therefore, you'll have to understand the fanatic rules, and we'll go over the fanatic rules to indicate the specificity of the abilities of fanatic units. Again, most of the time, people understand you're boosted in morale, but there's other things that are extremely important which come into play. Soviet players, these are the mines, not going to worry about that. Soviet players with no move markers, that's kind of important. They can't really do anything. They may not activate, which essentially perform fire or move orders if they start a movement phase. If they start a movement phase of the leader, or if they are broken and pinned, then they can move and activate. Soviet units that are not stocked with a leader may only conduct defensive fire. Again, what are they going to fire at? 2 hex range. You're probably going to be overwhelmed at that point anyway. So the Russian probably wants to unlock as many of his troops as possible, and be part of that. So if that's the case, say, hey Stu, why don't we just stack all our units up together? Well, making sure that you read the setup limitations up here. Setup between K and Q with no more than 1 squad and 1 leader per hex. The game is limiting you in essentially your mobility. So taking that into account, if you put everybody on the front line, you're not going to be able to move all your leaders around the entire game for those units to be activated. Right? Oh, and the other thing about the scenario special rules, again, this part right here, all SFSR rules are in play. One of those is, we'll get to it, hand-to-hand melee. That is a special rule. And again, hand-to-hand melee, say, Stu, my guys are 4, his guys are 4. It's just going to be like a regular killing each other. Again, if you go into that notion because you're going to be outnumbered, yes, you're going to blast a couple guys. But if the hand-to-hand close combat is semi-even, then he'll eliminate all of you. You'll be both killing each other, but units that we kill are not what we're looking for. We're looking for control of the hexes. We don't care if guys are dead or not. They just need to be out of our hexes that we're going to control. Right? So it means we need to either break or clear these units off the hill. And how many do we need? I think it's the majority. Let me go double check. Yeah, here you go. Again, I haven't played this one in a while. Spanish win if they control more level 2 hill hexes on between those M&O than the Soviets. So, level 2 hill hexes. Very important. And it even states between hex rows M and O. Well, does it really need to state M and O? because guess what? There are no other level 2 hill hexes. So between hex rows M and O is irrelevant. It's just these are level 2 hill hexes. It doesn't need to be stated where they are. It's the only ones on the map. It's a waste of ink to print that on your page. So, not needed. I don't know why it would ever be needed unless there were an additional hill, which there is down on the bottom part of this map right here that's cut off. You know, that the hill, this map was trimmed down by about 4 or 5 hex rows. And I believe there's another level 2 hill right there, but that is not into play. And again, that might be an artifact of maybe when they designed the scenario, they used the entire board, which goes down to probably 13 hex rows, and they may have included that hill in there. And they said, well, you know, the Germans are never going to split up both sides, so let's just cut it down to make it a smaller scenario. And so they probably didn't adjust that in there. Again, that should be picked up by the quote playtesters, and maybe editors. I don't know. Maybe the playtesters didn't even understand that. So, that's kind of what we're looking at. So let's get back to it. I'm just kind of digressing here. They outnumber us. We only have 6 squads and 1 2-4-8 half squad. So when I was revisiting this just recently, we start the game with a 2-4-8 half squad and the medium. Right? Remember this? I had this set up over here, 8-1 leader, whole 9 yards. We may still do that. You know, we may do that, may not, maybe. Who cares? Do we care? First of all, one, can the Russians, even with their 1-2 or their 2-6 LMGs, even if they can, oh, this guy can't set up here. Duh. If they could even fire on those units, that's going to be a 1 firepower on a 7 morale unit. A Russian would need to roll a 4, not being doubles if it doesn't have a leader, to even get a morale check. These guys are essentially immune to a Russian fire. So in that case, do we need the 2-4-8 with this guy? Would this guy be better served here, picking his nose, or occupying spaces and possibly controlling hill hexes? He can go here, then assault move there, and then advance phase over here. He can control 3 hexes. He's 8 morale. Point blank, he's got firepower of 4. 6 morale on this means if he's not entrenched or in a foxhole, he's going to get smoked. That's 4 even. That's a 6 for morale check. This guy's not going to pass it. So this guy's very valuable in its present form, plus the 8 morale. And guess what? What unit can boost that morale? Let's see, we're cowards, and we hide our 10-2 over here. This unit now has a 9 morale. It's easy for him. Let's say we assault move over here, and he assault moves there afterwards. Again, something to do, something to understand as a beginner. Remember, if we leave the adjacency of this 10-2, we are no longer fanatic. So if we move this counter here first, and he fires on us, rat-a-tat-tat, we're going to have 8 morale. But if we assault move this leader into here, concealed or not, are we just going to shoot at the moving leader when this guy hasn't moved? Probably not. You might, considering he's heroic. You just might. But if you don't, that allows this 2-4-8 to just assault move into 04 or advance phase or whatever, and he'll still be within the range, the 1 hex range of the 10-2 sphere of influence. So he'll still get the morale boost. He'll be 9 morale assault moving into this location, or straight up moving, versus the 8 morale if you did move, then move. You don't want to do that. You want to move, then move. In this case, it might be better. You're better served in moving units in the rear first, than units in the front. Typically, that's not the case, but understanding that this unit imparts special abilities to our other units means the basic premise of ASL movement and troop movement is altered. So, back to the notion of being outnumbered. Well, first of all, maximizing the effect of your units. 248 doesn't need to be here. We're going to put him in a boat. So if he goes in a boat and we have 6 other squads, right? Guess what? He's not going to fit in the boat because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's not fitting in a boat. So what do we have to do? We have to split this guy into a half squad. And again, that's standard beginning of game deployment, which will bring us to the next step. Deploy, put him here, give him the medium, reduce him a little bit, give him the medium because he's going to be immune to fire. You know, we can still pull this guy back, but I'm just going to leave him there just for the hell of it. And now we have our 1 squad equivalent that could fit into a boat. Okay? So if we do that with 1, can we do that with other units? Okay? Our 8 morale units, what's the difference between this 8 morale unit and the 6 morale unit? So we got our 10 minus 2, everybody's next to huddled in, all warm, getting our fanatic bonus going on. Which unit obviously is better overall to not be deployed into a half squad? The 468, obviously, because it has a better smoke exponent. It has better morale. So he can start providing cover. The 2, there's the other one. They can start providing smoke cover if necessary, especially if you're assault moving up a hill. It's not too bad. Then these units, either deployed or not, can go up. Now say, hey, Stu, they're losing range, they're losing spray fire. Again, I got to check. I'm not sure if the Spanish have spray fire. Don't really see it on the card, but I'm going to check it back in the Spanish blue rules. So we're not firing really anything past 4 hexes. Let's go look at the map. So we land here. Let's bring a half squad with us. A couple of them. Let's see where our half squads are here. What's the range? 4. We're going to have some guys that are full squads that could shoot the ridge. He's not going to be on the ridge. Why isn't he going to be on the ridge? We have a medium machine gun says he's not going to be on the ridge. Okay? So our ranges are very short. Let's say we get up to this little area over here. Let's say we advance phase over here. What's the range to most of these units? 1, 1, 3, 4. This guy's out of range, but guess what? The 426 can't even shoot us at that range. So even if we are exceeding our range, the enemy can't even shoot at us. So do we even care that they can't, that we have a 4-hex range or 6-hex range and they don't? Guess what? We'll have other units. Our 468s might be in these areas, might be on the flanks, that can provide the extra firepower that we need. Again, we're going to be blasting the guys in front of us. We're not really going to be shooting these guys on the bottom if guys are in front of us, right? We're going to blast these guys, disrupt them, run through them to the objective. Maybe over here. And then we're going to advance phase up on the hill. And that's part of the victory conditions, not these guys. If these guys are disrupted, leave them there. Leave them there. Don't worry about eliminating your disrupted units as the Germans. And this is what the Russians have to take into consideration as well when they decide to set up. If they have disrupted units, we don't care about prisoners. We can move through disrupted units hexes as you should read. Look up disruption. Anytime you have conscripts in your game, you must familiarize yourself or refresh the rules on disruption, because they will disrupt, period. And as the attacker, you must understand what you can do to disrupted units. Let's go take a look at that. All right, using your index, because that's what it's used for. Disruption. Note that's by heat of battle, surrender, Japanese. You don't really care about this crap. A1912, not really liking how it finds us here. Disruption, you got one paragraph. Should a garbage unit, which can't be replaced by low quality, which means all of our garbage units is the Russians, fail the morale check by more than its ELR. What is the ELR of the Russians in this scenario? Conscript units will almost never have an ELR of 3. Almost never. Doesn't mean they won't, but almost never. So it's 2 or worse. So which means you need to roll a 9 or higher, which is about 25% of the time, I think. And you're just getting smoked. So disrupted units, what can they not do? You cannot self-rally, which means we don't give a shit if they're behind us, necessarily. Unless rallied by a leader, you will surrender. Well, they will surrender at the start of the route phase. So if you move through them, then you won't have to accept their surrender. They will essentially be just piles of garbage left behind you. I guess it occupies the same location as, damn it. So if you move through them, they're going to surrender to you anyway. They do not route unless in a blaze location or in open ground, which means they'll move away from you. Even so, they won't surrender. So we'll go into that and how to avoid getting that. Or in open ground. Very important to understand this part. Or if you're in melee, you may not use low crawl. We'll get into that. So this is important. Very important. You remain disrupted until rallied or captured. Do not prevent enemy movement into or through their hex. That's interesting. So, if disrupted personnel or disrupted units do not prevent enemy movement into or through their hex, but do prevent route towards them. So this is huge. They will be so. If you come back over here, right? Unless rallied by a leader, a disrupted unit will surrender at the start of any route phase that begins adjacent or during any phase which occupies the same location as. So your infantry, when they walk through the hex, they will cause their surrender. They will just surrender to you. Because at that point, this clause here will be satisfied during any phase. Doesn't say any friendly phase. Any phase that occupies the same location as. It has some melee exceptions down here, though. But it says, but do not prevent route. Let's see, do not prevent enemy movement into. At that point, I think this only applies to probably your trucks that don't have any personnel in them. And things like that. Even then, they can still drive into them. So I'm not sure. Well, maybe. This clause here is probably to denote that you can walk into their hex and cause their surrender immediately instead of having to wait until the route phase, get them failure to route, and so on and so forth. So this is how you disperse this stupid thing here. I said, well, enemy movement into or through. So that means you can move into their hex. They will surrender immediately, and you continue on moving. And it doesn't have any movement penalties for doing so. And you're not overrunning single band counters into or through their hex. So it doesn't do anything. It has the reference of 4.14. Let's go take a look at that to see what this is referencing. 4.14 is enemy units. And this is just eliminating the clause that you cannot move into the same locations as an enemy unit. And here's some exceptions here. So disrupted, they'd still be armed enemy units. Unarmed units are not. You can move in there. Even unarmed units, you have to engage in close combat to capture them. Disrupted units simply surrender right when you move them. So disrupted units are worse than unarmed units in terms of you maintaining control over your own guys. So, interesting thing. And again, that's just something that we know will occur during the game. So if these guys get blasted, I don't have a disrupted counter immediately with me. If we move into that hex, they will surrender to us immediately, and we'll have a prisoner with us. And 2, 3, 4, and guess what? If he shoots at us, these prisoner units, I don't know where the prisoner. Oh, here it is. Guess what? Then those units will then be subject to the same fire, and you're essentially going to get rid of the units for the Russians. There is a chance that you will break and they will not, whatever, but it will help get rid of those units. I think it's an easy way to do it. Because you don't want these units, they still screw you up in terms of routing. So let's say both of these units break. Okay, let's get rid of this crap. If both of these units break and are disrupted, let me grab a disruption. All right, I found some disruption counters, no normal route or self-rally. So if we move into its hex, it automatically is surrendered. We can deploy that. And that's another way for you to get easy deployment for your troops. I'll get over that in a minute. So we can capture him. If we move around him, 1, 2, 3, and then let's say we advance up to here, get into these locations, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4. They won't normally route unless they're in open ground within normal range. And at this point, they would have to route. Luckily, they have this brush that they can get to I2. So they go 2, 4, 2, 4, and not get interdicted. If this brush were not there, they could not low crawl as disrupted units. Other units may low crawl, but disrupted units can't. So let's say they were disrupted. Let's say they were disrupted like up here. They would have to route full on through those hexes in whatever destination they want to choose, and would get interdicted for free. So disrupt units do not low crawl. Don't let your opponent low crawl because they're used to everybody low crawling, because no one likes to take a chance in getting their broken unit to a better location. Many times it's good to take interdiction. Unfortunately, even if you have super low morale, if you're in desperate need of getting units. And remember, if you're a full squad, you're only going to be half squatted, and if you route to a location, even if you're interdicted and take casualties, if your intent is to block that location and getting occupied the next movement phase, it's worth losing a half squad, because otherwise you're probably, that location and deterring enemy movement is probably more valuable than a broken unit that will not rally. I mean, you are honestly straight up using broken units that will impart, quote, no function in the game, but you are stopping enemy movement because of that rule that we just referenced, 4.14, I believe it was. You may not move through enemy's location. Of course, guess what? You can say, hey, Stu, you're full of shit. If it's a disrupted unit, that won't matter, because disrupted units do not impart movement restrictions. So disrupted units get the super short end of the stick, where you must go full bore to the location. Obviously you can go through the brush, but assuming the brush wasn't there, you will have to take interdiction and get shredded, and you will not block any enemy movement moving through your hex. So when you disrupt, you're in a world of hurt. They may not self-rally. For all intents and purposes, they are dead. But in this case, let's say the Germans get broken up here, right? And he has to route. These guys will deter any route paths. He would have to route this general direction, which may or may not help you. So know that even though they're disrupted, they will still screw up route paths, which is probably their most important function. So be careful with that. Now coming back over here, the purpose of disrupted units that we can use in this scenario as the Germans. Okay. Let's say this guy's here. Let's say these guys prep fired and broke these two units here. This unit here could move into this location for one, obtain this prisoner unit, this that unit there, and he could do a couple things because you will be able to do this quite easily during the game. Is just sweep up units. He can sweep them up, won't cost any movement factors extra. He just surrenders. Right? Then he can go 2. Pick this coward up. I'm going to move these guys over here for now. He will surrender. All right. Now we got 2 guys. They Stu, we got a 467 tied up and all that shit. Yeah, again, capturing prisoners. Check the prisoner rules. What can we do? That's section A20, I believe, gentlemen. Here's your A20. Bop, bop, bop. Keep reading. It's a large section. Honestly, this is a terrible section of the rules. I would go through. This is my newest update on the thing because I don't have anything highlighted. For all intents and purposes, 20.5 is the crux of the prisoner rules. And of course, it's in a giant paragraph and it has multiple concepts within it. This is a poorly written paragraph. I'm not alone in this thoughts. And if you think it's a perfectly written paragraph, well, 99% of the ASL population probably doesn't agree with you. What I would probably do is, sentence by sentence, I'd use technology, highlight it. You can change that down to light, something like that, just to separate the sentences. Some people have their own, in another version of the rule book I have electronically, I have this all bullet denotion or marked. I've marked with bullets, and I just bulleted the entire section, just so. And then you can just isolate sentence by sentence, go through sentence by sentence to break out the concepts. Otherwise, it has a tendency to blur together, and you'll miss. So, what can you do when you capture a unit? Let me go find it. All right, again, 20.5, huge section. When our buddy goes into this hex and obtains his second prisoner, or the first prisoner, he could do 2 things. Well, one thing he might want to do, let's bring our rule back up. Again, it's always at the end. An unbroken squad, guard squad, can deploy into house squads automatically at any time, regardless of nationality or leader requirements, which means your Russians can deploy, your partisans can deploy, anybody can deploy, your Italians can deploy, things like that. Usually the guys that are super restricted. So this gives us a huge option. Deploying into house squads automatically. Normally, the prisoner units will restrict your combat capabilities of their guard. In this case, we can simply deploy this unit and have one guy carry the prisoners up to 5 times the unit size number, and the other guy can do what he wishes. So essentially, we capture those prisoners, which are not going to be route problems for us in the future. Keep moving, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the advanced phase, we could just simply drop them off. And then advance to wherever Heart's Delight. These guys might advance up here. Just leave them. Right? Short scenario, where's he going to go? He might be able to scrounge for weapons. Snake Eyes, if he rolls a 1 in 36 chance of Snake Eyes, which means essentially you'd have to play this scenario 6 times for these units to for a unit to actually get rearmed. 1 in 36 will achieve that result. And if he does achieve the result, whatever. So in that case, another trick you might want to do, again, learning scenario, learning how to play with what you will be given in the scenario. You will have prisoners. Most likely. Don't just kill them. You know, in this case, you can essentially render them useless. So when you get a prisoners, let's say both these guys got a prisoner, or one guy got a prisoner, what can you do to these prisoners? You can deploy them freely. Obviously, how many unit size is that? 2, 4, 6, 8. We still have a high unit size number. Okay? So, one thing you could do is deploy them all. Let's say we're 2, 3, 4, and the advanced phase, we drop them all off and continue on. Now, yes, that gives them 4 rolls to rearm, but they will rearm as conscripts and they will rearm as half squads. There are no full squads here. And that's another trick that you can do. Obviously, let's say we don't use it. So you double their chance of doing it. Okay, 1 in 18 of getting a recover roll, but they're going to be half squads. And a half squad firing uphill 2+1 is essentially going to be a 1 chart. We already equilibrated the 1 chart for the LMG here firing over here, essentially having no effect. So prisoners really won't. If one's going to be rearmed, it's not going to be a big deal. They're probably going to move over here or wherever. If I were the Russians and I had the prisoners, I'd start moving this way and rolling my rearmaments. Maybe you can get behind somebody. But this game's only going to last 1 or 2 more turns. It might happen. And if it does, actually, it just makes it a more exciting game. But let's say you don't want to drop them off because 90% of people don't. Let's take the difference between this, okay? We captured both our squads. Let's just say both these guys had full squad. And these guys made it up here. Let's say for whatever reason we're up here. So when these units get fired upon, you have to be aware of what we can deal with and the damage we can take. So you never want to be broken when a prisoner's unit's with you. And I say, hey, Stu, it doesn't matter if the broken units fails, he'll be casualty reduced. Yeah, you're right. So if he fails his morale check, he goes down to a, that's no optical illusion. He doesn't lose any strength at all. And you'll be broken, and you'll be subject to a task check by that prisoner unit into attacking you. The problem is, he's the same strength. But when you capture them, you had deployed them both, and everybody fails their morale check when you're fired on. You break, and then let's say he fails his morale check, so he'll die. He fails his morale check, he'll die. It gets rid of the prisoners for you. This guy is not going to fail 2 morale checks. So it would behoove the Russian player, instead of firing on this unit, fire on this unit here, if the game were to last longer, because your prisoners will survive here versus here, more likely. You know, you got 2 rolls to roll less than whatever your morale check value is, and you don't care if he fails here. You're still going to be up and running. He may break, and therefore it gives you an opportunity to react to that situation. So when in doubt, deploy these little bastards. And yeah, it's more unit size number, and this, that, and the other, but you don't really want to be up in the front line with your prisoners anyway. And then also you can use these guys, you know, to help you entrench or something like that. I mean, essentially be the same, but help them do tasks for you. Again, because most scenarios are short, and you know, a lot of fortifications are just bypassed because you don't have any time. That's really not going to be a gameplay. The old squad leader scenarios allowed that. So again, knowing your prisoner rules, knowing that you could split these up so you can maintain at least some sort of semblance of force. Let's just say you collected all 4 of them, right? One guy, you can bring them with you, split them all up, bring them with you. When he shoots on you, they all die. And now you don't have to worry about them. So, but that's something you could take into consideration. And guess what? If these guards kill you in close combat, only one of them will get rearmed. So there's not that big a deal, and you can just probably vanquish that unit anyway. Anyway, get a little bit off track. But prisoners, read the prisoners' rules, read them slowly, break them down by paragraph, by sentence by sentence. 20.5 will give you is essentially the core of the prisoner rules. Do not take them. Don't read that section lightly, even the 50 times that you may read that section. So, but disruption, they'll be disrupted. And again, when they disrupt, you can capture them, deploy, and this leads us to the end game. This is kind of going to the end game. Take these guys over here. Let's pull them to the front. So the end game. If we just assault move, let's say we're going to advance phase all our units up to the front. Let's say these are the guys that were left. We had a 248 and 247. Let's just say they were down here. This guy's just in the back. These guys aren't here. Let's just see these guys are not here. All right. This is end game. And this applies to both units, right? The Russians and the Germans. The Russians might want to move their leaders around to negate the no-move markers, to get these guys either up on the hill or what have you. Let's say a couple guys were killed, and this is what we got left. All right? 5 units is what we have left. Everyone's dead. Nobody has a no-move. Even if he does have a no-move on him, it doesn't really matter. Because these guys are going to be stagnant defenders. You don't need to move to these positions to move them. The only thing you need to do is move them, maybe eliminate this no-move to, again, allow you to entrench. So we could have 5 entrenchments or more up there if that were the case of what you were going to do. So, but the Germans move up here on the line. The Russians counterattack. They break this unit here. And they might say they break this guy here. Right? Those are full squads. They'll have to rout away. And remember, what turn will this be? Based upon our first video. Probably turn 3 at the earliest, absolute earliest. Turn 4 at opportunistic, maybe turn 5. Now we only have 2 units. He still has 5. And let's say this unit was fine over here. And this will bring into the hand-to-hand close combat rules. What will give us an advantage for the Germans? One, and remember, in hand-to-hand close combat, even if you don't kill him, you will cause him to be a melee. So break the regular units here. That's the first problem. Is if you break a unit, you lose a full unit, which is 1/6 of our force. If you were to have the 10-2, deploy a unit once per turn. Deploy our, I don't want to clone that. Deploy our, here, I'll just switch them. Deploy our half squads, right? Deploy our full squads and half squads, or 4, 6, 7s. We could start deploying 1 squad at the beginning of the game. You might need maybe 2 others. But let's say we get our half squads up here. And let's say this guy was right here and he fires on us. And because we have that aura of, let's say he were up here, we have that aura of invulnerability. They'll have a higher morale. Let's say only this guy breaks. Right? And let's say this guy breaks. Well, we can engage this guy and engage this guy in close combat. And because it's hand-to-hand, we still have a decent chance of killing the enemy unit. Right? We probably don't want to move into here to make a hand-to-hand, simply because we don't want to lose our 10-2 leader. Or, if you had a unit behind him, move in there. Leave this guy here. Again, I probably wouldn't do that, but if you want to do that, you're more than free to do that. This will give us a 1-to-1. He'll be at 1-to-2, and we'll have a -2. So we'll need a 9 to casually reduce him. He'll need a 6 to casually reduce us. So, we can work at that. So let's say we both get eliminated. Guess what? Next turn, he'll have to move a guy up. Well, actually, he won't have to move anybody up. If we assault move here, we immediately control that location. And then obviously he's going to shoot at us. So essentially it gives us more units to kind of move in there. But so again, that's what going to be late game is going to be. Deploying your units gives you more units to do an end around. You know, maybe move back here, move a guy unit here. While these guys are getting fired up over here, we just advance phase probably everybody at the same time. Now he can only shoot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 targets. But we still control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's say we got here as well. We moved up there. So we control the majority of the hexes. So even if though he breaks us, all of these are under German control or Spanish control at this point. Same thing. And then even if we break, then he would have to come out of his foxholes and move into that location. Let's say a couple of these guys broke. And when that happens, we shoot him. Because now he doesn't have the +2 terrain. He breaks and he's doomed. And he has to route. Did he gain control of that? Yes. But he'll lose a unit too as well. And then we could just come back around and do the same thing. If he has to come out of his foxholes, then he's going to be in trouble. Again, that's why I think it would behoove the Russians to start digging in on top of the hill and just dig in everywhere back here. That way he can, if the Germans occupy a spot and they get broken, you could advance phase 1, 2, 3 into that location. Probably want to do it with the leader so you don't get counter exhausted. But that you can do something like that. And that way you could regain without being exposed. Even if you are counter exhausted, you won't be exposed in the open. So that's an option you have. Could be tough, but the hand-to-hand close combat will help cancel the foxhole effects. So splitting your guys in the half squads, another thing there. It's not written on the scenario card. It's something that you have to understand as an option that's available to you. And that, in this case, you need bodies. You need numbers of bodies. So if you have, let's say you deployed everybody, you would have 12 units to his 8 units. And your -2 leader kind of makes up for that batch. Now, let me go check to see one more thing about the Spanish, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, the final thing that we're going to cover here, and this might be one of those areas where critical hit might be lacking in their just approach to the rule, clarity of unit capabilities, things like that. So going back to a standard unit, again, this is because this is a strategy you may have, and it may affect the actual gameplay. Let's say these units are here, and you've got another bad guy right here, and you've got a 10-2 leader over here, and you got a 4-6-7 with him, and a 4-6-8. Let's just say this is the situation here. Well, if these are Germans, and these are Russians, and even if they were in foxholes, and again, as a learning scenario, 10-2 leader, even if it's not a leader, if it's a hero, you can apply the same principle. Is that these units right here, what's under the range? Do you know what the dash under the range means on your counter? If you don't, go to the anatomy of an infantry unit counter. It's at the inside of your cover, or in the electronic rules. I have no clue where that would be, but that would denote that you have spray fire capabilities. So normally, and this is where I would use the 10-2, I would use this whole thing as an 8 firepower even against this unit. I would definitely spray fire this unit to be a 4 even on both of them, meaning A 7 will pin them. A 6 will generate a normal morale check. Because, again, he's outnumbering you, breaking more units at the one time would be worth it. And your higher morale gives units that are next to you higher survivability. So even if you failed on the attack, they're more likely to survive any counterattack from that. So spray fire is definitely an option. Let's say you had something like this. You could still spray fire these units with the leader. Why could you do that? Well, because the leader is also denoted as a hero. So he can add his -1 hero dice roll modifier to the multi-hex spray fire attack on the same targets. So instead of a -2, you would have a -1, which isn't much of a reduction. So keep that in mind as well, is that could be another possibility, not only in this game, but in future games. Use the hero as spray fire capability. It could be useful in that aspect. So I went to the Spanish Fury rules, and going into the special rules, you just kind of read through there and talks about, you know, terrain, stuff like that. And then if you look at the special rules applying to the 250th Spanish Blue Division, the Soviet sucks. I'm not sure why that would apply to the Spanish Blue Division, but it's there. 1.22, Spanish units were equipped and outfitted as a regular German Heer division. So, as such, they fall under any national capability rules that applies to Germans. Exception, their heat of battle dice roll and leader creation modifier is -1, which means they are better than the Germans when they start spazzing out when you roll snake eyes and morale checks. So they'll generate more heroes. They'll battle hard more often, probably because they were veteran type of units back at the home in the home front from the Spanish Civil War. So if you look at and I had to look at my actual counters, it does not have the actual counters designation as having spray fire on their units. I think that might be an error, because the rules, and you always have to go back to the rules state that they're regular German Heer divisions. So again, that's another part of your reading. Do these guys have spray fire or not, or are we just substituting these counters out? If you use the actual counters, they won't have the spray fire listed under them. Is that an error? Could be. Could be. If they're using the same equipment, why wouldn't they have the same spray fire capabilities, considering they're more veteran than the actual German units that are involved in the war? So, you could play it as you wish. I think the spray fire helps the Germans in this one. If not, it doesn't really hurt them that much, because you're probably only going to have one attack that's going to be spray fired, and it's going to be generated around the 10-2. And but it is a possibility. You could spray fire, and this is a machine gun. I'll have to look at the machine guns too. Oh, actually, they don't have the machine guns. The machine guns aren't listed in the counters. You just get these from the counters tray from the Germans and Beyond Valor. So this has spray fire capability. So this medium machine gun could spray fire on 2 hexes up on the map, which, and again, keep the -1 leader. You could spray fire 2 firepower even on 2 hexes. You know, breaking 2 units at once, disrupting them, means they're going to be out of the fight. That's a game changer. And because this possibility back here exists, I got to be honest with you, I wouldn't put any of the Russians up on the front line. I'd keep them back for point-blank shots. And that, you know, that kind of goes along with my setup I had here, where you just keep these guys. You just keep these guys in point-blank positions. You know, have this guy maybe here, but just leave him here. You might as well just leave him here. That way you can fire group. So all these positions here are covered, and wherever you don't cover them, you know, let's say you've got all these guys covered. They're all behind the lines. The Germans are coming, right? Say they want to land over here. You're going to cover there. Let's say that guy was right here with an entrenchment. Let's see how the other guy was in Cairo over here for whatever reason, or maybe just right here. Whatever, right? Can you position your mines to take that into effect? Let's get rid of these guys, right? So if you want to, if you're worried about the Germans coming over here and staying out of range of most of your units and shooting them, guess what? You could put your mines in open ground hexes or level 1 hexes, or actually ground level hexes, not level 1, but level 0 hexes. Do something like this or something like that, right? Force them to come this way, or maybe they'll just go that way. Maybe take a mine hit. You never know, right? But you won't be able to put the mines up here. So this might slow them down, especially if you do something like this. You know, he'll have to come around this way. And if he comes around this way, if he avoids them, these guys walk up through here. Guess what? He enters the range of your units instantly. Right? Normal range. He's not likely to go through here, then here, then here. More than likely, one of these guys is going to be an actual minefield. He may be broken back here and just stuck, you know, in a corner. Get them to funnel up to where you want to shoot at them. So, place them here. You know, is that an okay position? Right? You could spread them out. So when they land, let's say the 10-2 is going to be the center point. All the boats are going to be around him because you get the extra morale. If these are minefields, they'll get the morale factor from the 10-2 leader. And, you know, doesn't matter where he lands, whether he lands here, 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 anywhere this guy lands other than right here, you know, you're only going to be subject to one minefield, and then you're going to go this way. But again, we kind of want him to if we position like this. You know, everything's point blank. Everything's 8 firepower. Even over here, that's going to be 8 firepower. So 2, 3, 4, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, that'd be 6. Yeah, absolutely. This is out of range, but that'd be 6 firepower. So you could put them all over here, but I probably put 2 mines over here just for the hell of it, just in case some guys break. Or if you don't want them to go this way, throw your mines here. Now you can do this. But again, if you do that, is he likely going to come here? Probably not. And then you could shift your guys over this way. So however you want to approach the mines on this one, you can see that, you know, where he puts his mines. Do the Germans care if those are bad boys? Heck, you know, roll through there. The problem is these mines are going to be stronger than probably any firepower that the Russians are going to have. Not point blank. So, but your morale will be increased because you'll be close to the 10-2, right? If you're right there and all these guys are next to them, they're all going to be increased morale level. So that's something that you can easily take advantage of, is that morale. And again, reading your Scenario special rules, understanding the unit's capabilities, because this is then a standard capability. That's a very special ability this unit has. Then you'll be fine. And as the Russians, just set up your forces how you want to defend. You know, if you want them, if you think he's going to move, if you think he's not going to come this way, put your leaders over here, right? If he comes this way, these guys will start to be able, they'll lose their no move markers, and then they can move 2, 3, advance, you know, 1, 2, 3, advance, and then your leaders can move over into these positions, and next turn, those guys will be free. So pretty much your entire front line will be able to free to move. And later on, I wouldn't go up the hill this way with your conscripts. I would move them from L5 to M5. I most likely would want to move them this direction and come up the backside. Why? Why would I want to come up the backside? Because he's going to shoot you. at a 4. That's like in the open. So it's going to be like a 4 minus 3. You don't want to walk up the hill. You don't want to walk up the hill this way. You're going to get shot. So you could route. You could advance up there. Advance be your best bet. But again, if you advance, spray fire 2 even. That's the first shot he's going to take. And if you advance here, any Germans that have made it to here all have line of sight to you. He's got nothing else to do but blast you. You know, that'd be his prep fire phase, but he's got nothing to do but blast you. So, might be a possibility. I mean, you'd have a shot on him to even. Something you could put some pressure on. Like if you got all your units left, you can absolutely do that. But that's a choice that you'll make as a defender, and you know, live and die with it. Don't complain about the dice unless you roll 10s on the whole game. This decision versus this decision, remember, you need to maintain control of the hexes. You don't need to break any German units. You don't need to kill any German units. You just need to be a body in these locations. If you keep them like this, you win the game by default. The Germans must rip you from these positions. You control them all. So, even if you just set up like this and just sit there the entire game, viable strategy. The mines will be pointless because the Germans will just run by them. But that's a viable strategy. Maybe you put, 2 guys over here and put your leaders with them, right? So you could free them up because these guys aren't moving. Free them up in case the Germans move somewhere else. Leaders move behind. These guys can either come with them or get in front. Point blank shots, sacrificial lambs. Right? Block, body block. They'll die quickly, but if you break 1 or 2 German units, it might slow them up. So, things to think about. Again, that's just strategy. But seeing what we have here, there's really no terrain. You have to use all the other things in your ball of tricks to approach the scenario, which means understanding deployment, understanding scenario special rules and how they apply to possible strategies, meaning keeping all your units together to get that morale level boost. If you spread them apart, if the 10-2 comes down here and everybody else goes up here, except for a couple guys, are you using him to the best of your ability? Maybe, maybe not. But just things to think about when you're doing a game. Like if you have like I say, if this comes across in a boat, it's going to be dismantled. And when are you going to mantle it? In the friendly fire phase, whatever. But you still have to keep moving. If you move it, the medium machine gun can't fire. If you move that, you can't fire it. The only time you're not going to move it is when you get up on the hill, which is at the end of the game. And again, we covered that before. So why not give you an opportunity to use it every single turn? Again, you could put the 7-0 with him, but it's going to be more effective with the 8-1 because your 10-2 is going to be literally carrying the load of the attack with him in the front. And that's where the fun of the scenario comes in. Because if you lose him with a sniper, then you're going to be in a much more difficult place. All right. There's a lot of other stuff you can go over. Again, we just touched on the hand-to-hand combat and why deploying benefits the Germans in that hand-to-hand combat. Why does it benefit the Germans? Because the more we kill them, yes, we are going to be in the shorter end, but if we kill them, we're outnumbered. And now if we occupy all these hexes, right, let's say it becomes locked in melee, we could fire in those hexes because they're 6 morale, and we're either 7, 8, or 9 morale, depending on where the leader is. So we could fire into the melees, generating morale checks. The 6s will fail before your 7, 8s, or 9s will fail. So don't be afraid to shoot into melees. Anyway, again, try this scenario out. And Let me know what you come across. Leave the comments in below if you do play it. It's a pretty quick one, and obviously you've seen the scenario special rules and all that crap. The rest of the game rules pretty much are just like terrain types and other things that really don't apply. Other than the rivers. The river is the other special rule that's in the rules. But the boats are simple. You don't really have to read all the boats. The boats are just load, move, unload. He's not going to fire on you. It's really not going to be a problem. If he does, he's going to lose those units by your medium. So his attacks are going to be almost pointless against your boats unless he gets squads down there. And he can't do that because of the scenario special rule that says they can't move. It's as simple as that. So it makes it a very simple, straightforward scenario, but with a lot of parts that you have to take into consideration approaching this game. Or not. You can ignore everything I say and just play it straight up. Don't deploy anybody. Kill all your prisoners. Run through the minefields. Split your 10-2 up with the other guys and play it that way, and you could probably have just as much fun. But if you want to learn how to play it a little bit better, become knowledgeable of what your units can do, not only your units, but how you can use the rules to maximize your deficiencies, or minimize your deficiencies, rather, in the game. Again, the game starts with the biggest one I just noticed right before I did this video, is it starts with a 2-4-8. I'd much rather have that 8 morale up on the front. So deploy unit, stick it back here, and it's like, well, if I deploy 1, I could deploy more than 1, which will give me more units to charge the hill. It's as simple as that. I mean, it literally is. If you did nothing else, it's as simple as that, because your hand-to-hand melee is really good. 1 to 2 is a 4. If I stick 1 guy on him, I need a 4 for casualty reduction. Or if I go hand-to-hand, I need a 6 for casualty reduction. Odds increase dramatically. And you just want to clear those guys off the hill. And then you only need 1 or 2 units left to claim everything else. So, go for it. Play the scenario. Have fun. And go enjoy yourself. And if you do, leave a result and tell me what you did. Tell me what I missed. Tell me other things that you found that were interesting with this particular scenario, or other ones that you've played, by incorporating some of the things you may have learned here. All right? All right, gentlemen. Whip out your tongs. Whip out your giant boards and your plexiglass, and now go play some damn ASL.